Good day, everyone. Welcome to Business. Good day, everyone. Welcome to Business World's Leadership Series with the theme Preparing the Next Gen Leaders, Millennials in the C-Suite. I'm Jenina Ibañez, and I'll be moderating today. So much has already been discussed on how to manage millennials in the workplace. As they get older, more of them are starting to climb up the organizational ladder, assuming leadership positions previously held by their seniors. At this forum session, we will discuss this next generation of leaders, particularly on how they approach leadership, what leadership attributes and potentials they possess, and what key lessons they can learn from the preceding generation. So we're going to get started with some opening statements from our three speakers. We'll start with Mr. Brian Liu. So Mr. Brian Liu is the Chief Financial Officer of Cirtek Holdings Philippines Corp. In 2018, he successfully developed and qualified a 5G transmitter module devices for IDT, bringing Cirtek to a new level in the industry. In 2019, he designed and developed the next generation GX device family for IDT 5G infrastructure. On the same year, he was promoted to the position of Managing Director at Cirtek Electronics. Sir Brian?
Hello, everyone, and thank you all for being here with us this morning. I'm very glad to have the opportunity to be here with all of you today, along with my fellow millennials. And I'd like to thank Business World, a highly respected publication, for setting all this up together. And I'd like to thank all our audience here with us today to listen to our stories and our insight. I want to give special thanks to Shai and Janina as well for moderating this forum and appreciate your time. So, as the introduction stated, the topic of millennials has been something that has been talked about for the longest time now. And there's been a lot of issues and topics circulating this subject, wherein there were polarizing statements, whether positive or negative, but nonetheless, all of it have been very interesting. And while this has been a topic widely discussed in the past, we're here to, instead of ponder on the statements, we're here to actually share with the audience the journey that we've had as millennials traversing the corporate setting and our experience in navigating real life situations. It's been a very exciting journey indeed for millennials and for all other generations out there. But I think what makes this forum interesting is the fact that we're here to share stories and experiences that we went through all the twists and turns, the curbs and apexes on the road, the ups and downs and the valleys, and all the different terrains that millennial had to navigate. So we hope that this will be an enjoyable forum for all our attendees and our hosts. And we hope that we can share some valuable insights to folks and leaders who may be handling a lot of millennials in their workspace, parents who may be having or have millennial sons and daughters who are traversing the corporate setting as well. And we hope that you all enjoy our values and insight. Thank you for being here and thank you for giving us the opportunity. Good morning.
Thank you, sir. So our next speaker is Mr. George Royeca. He's the Chief Transport Advocate of Angkas, a motorcycle ride-hailing service with over 4 million downloads and 30,000 biker partners. He's an advocate of inclusive mobility and sustainable transport and is now aiding bikers who have ceased work due to the pandemic, finding alternative ways for them to deliver services and retain their livelihoods during the crisis. Mr. Royeca also co-led the launch of the Ingat Angat Tayong Lahat campaign and is one of 7 awardees of the Outstanding Young Men of the Philippines. Sir?
Hey, thanks, Janina. Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me here. Shout out to Business World for having a forum like this. I think millennials in the C-suite is very important. There's a lot of rising millennials that are becoming leaders in the corporate world right now in various industries, and they bring in a different set of values, different set of insights, and kind of shift us from a new way of thinking. I think millennials are very, very important. I mean, they bring in the energy, they bring in this mindset of problem solving. So for them, the challenge is solving the problem, and that's what I really, really like about them. It's the goal is to make life better, to make life more efficient. It's very different from what we were used to growing up, when a lot of it was based on economics, based on whether you're going to make money or get rich or be successful in those terms. But now, what's valuable to them or what holds value to them is a bit different. It can be in terms of efficiencies. It can be in terms of just generally making their lives a lot better or making other people's lives better. They look at problems like climate change, equality, and these are the things that's very, very important to them. Without millennials, Angkas would never have gotten off the ground. Before riding it was about buying your own car. That was the mindset and that was the status. And because of millennials who just wanted a more efficient way of traversing the city traffic, they didn't care what they rode on as long as it was safe, as long as it was efficient, affordable, and accessible to everybody. And that changed a lot of lives. Even with our social media, we don't do any traditional marketing. We don't do a lot of TV. And millennials really created that community. Half of the stuff there is really very, very alien to me in terms of, the content, the tone, and millennials have found a way to cut through several demographics and just develop the whole Angkas community. And this community was the one that got together and really pushed for changes and amendments into regulations and acceptance of these motorcycle taxis, which is now changing a lot of people's lives themselves. With job creation, there are 18 million motorcycle owners in the country. And my motorcycle bikers in Angkas, they make 3 times the minimum wage. And it's really, taken them out of poverty. And in the process has helped, several thousands of commuters, increase their, quality of life. Traffic is an attack to our quality of life because it limits our choices, distance, friendships, schools we go to, places we work. And we are shackled by traffic, and motorcycles is the key and the answer, and that solved that problem and allowed us to allowed us to really create an impact to many of the commuters in Metro Manila and hopefully nationwide. Thanks, guys.
Right, thank you, sir. So millennials' emphasis on efficiency really changed the way we do public transport or transport in general. So our next speaker is Mr. Marvin Trulin. He is the Chief Growth and Development Officer of Mega Global Corporation. So after being in this role for 5 years, he has transformed it from a single brand company with Mega Sardines to a 4-brand enterprise: Mega Tuna, the 100% pure tuna; Mega Prime Quality canned fruits and vegetables for Filipino homemakers; and Mega Creations, the gourmet sardine line. Sir?
Hi, everyone. Well, thank you for that intro. Thank you to Business World for the invitation. And of course, very honored to be here with my fellow millennials, Brian and George. So, hi, I'm Marvin. So, along with my 3 other siblings, we work for our dad. And I'm currently the current millennial president of the Philippine Association of National Advertisers. So, hi, guys, from PANA. I'm also the co-founder of AutoKid Trucks in PUVMP Solutions, where we are currently helping change and modernize the public utility jeepneys of millions of Filipinos so that, like what George says, increase the quality of life for the riding experience after years and years of using the old-fashioned jeepneys. So being a second-generation business leader, I have both the opportunity to be blessed and also not so blessed by being a COO, which is a child of an owner. And of course, blessed for having the opportunity to be able to carve my own path through some of the businesses that I started with my partners. But I think it's that mentality that the child of owners and the millennials have right now, that we are spoiled, that we have an easier life than what they had to do before, and it is that mentality right now that we have to really work hard at breaking. Being a millennial leader and an entrepreneur in the workplace now has its pros and cons, as you all know. But in my experience, given the tools, the resources, and the cards that we've been dealt with, we can achieve even greater things that we can't even imagine for ourselves now. So hopefully we can use our youthfulness, our age, our being a millennial to our advantage to make a big impact in the world. So I'm excited to learn from everyone here in this forum, and I hope each and every one of you are too. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for sharing your insights. So if our viewers today have any questions for our speakers, please post them in the comment section, and we will read them out later. Let's get started with our discussion. So our first question is, now that you have assumed your leadership position, your executive position, what are the skills and the personal characteristics that help you the most? Maybe we can get started with Sir Brian.
So I would say that Just like everything in life, relationships play a key role in everything. And of course, transitions in managerial roles and positions will always entail certain tension and certain friction amongst the different individuals in the workspace. But I believe that millennials have the skill in being able to mitigate all these tensions by being natural people person and by being natural team players. And relationships among colleagues is definitely one of the most important aspects of traversing the corporate setting. Now, just to give a little background on pretty much the journey that I've had, I wasn't always in the financial aspect of the business. I actually originated from the semiconductor arm of the group, where I was positioned more into an operational responsibility, starting with working in the production line. I was able to engage with some of the best in-house talent that we have, some of the best and seasoned engineers that I consider veterans in the industry. And I was able to develop relations and learn a lot from these highly intellectual individuals. Moving on to the production line, I was later on transitioned to more customer facing roles where I was able to engage with end clients and together with their development teams and their deployment teams. And this brought enabling me to further develop bonds and relations with people in the industry. So moving around different levels allowed me to build goodwill amongst the different team members. And this actually eased in the transition to the position to which I'm serving at the moment. Be
Right. So,
elected by the board, actually. So, in a nutshell, that eases in your transition.
right. So, Sir Marvin, would you say the same? That is it the personal connections that have helped you assume your leadership position now?
Yeah, well, yeah, of course, partly. I think three personal characteristics help me most. Number one, first and foremost, is of course the respect for the elders, the family, the history of the company, the way the older generations work, and how they grew that organization. We have to respect that. Number two, just like Brian, empathy. Being a regular employee, I worked in SM as a start, and I also rose from the ranks in our family business. I wanted to gain respect. I didn't want to come in as a boss. So I started as a van salesman, selling sardines to sari-sari stores each and every day. I knew how they felt. I knew how they worked. I felt for them. So I knew their pain points. I knew what they needed, what was needed to be done in order to improve their lives for working for the company. So that empathy is really, really important, in my opinion, being aware of what's happening on the ground. And number three, most importantly, integrity. You have to always do what you say, and you always have to do what is right. So those are the three things I think I got from my father, from my family. So hopefully a lot of the millennials can also have that too.
All right. Thank you, sir. How about you, Sir George?
I think one thing that's been said about millennials, no, I think this is both a criticism and a strength, and I think it's been always positioned as a criticism is that millennials care too much. They always care about things. They care about their personal growth, but they care about other people around them, touching on climate change and other serious challenges that the world faces us. But I believe that that is really one of the major strengths that millennials have. They grew up in a world where they see how we got it wrong, how things went awry, and they want to fix things. They want to change things. They want to They want to put a lot of passion and energy into making things right, even just as little as how they do the report or how do the work they do and the amount of time they put in there. Sometimes to a fault, sometimes way too much. But I think if you hone that skill, and if you're not shy about that, that caring too much, or sense of caring too much in yourself, then you'll be able to accomplish a lot of great things. The good thing I like about millennials also is they're very team oriented. They're very social people. So they like communities. They build communities rather than just have coworkers. And that has added empathy, a lot of personal touch, personal relationships, that I think before was seen again as a negative, being too personal in the workplace or being too personal, in whatever that you're doing in your career, in your profession. But one thing that we started to realize is that you can't take out the person wherever you are. There will be a level of being personal there, and I think that's something that people should embrace, and enhance as part of their professional or work community.
Right, sir. So, how would you describe your own personal leadership style, and how would you say that's different from more traditional methods?
Are you talking to me,
Yes, sir.
Janina? I think for me, I'm very results oriented. I mean, like I'm in the beach right now, so I mean, of course, everybody's worked from home. But even before the pandemic, you know, attendance doesn't really matter to me so much, as long as you're in the critical meetings, and you know your KPIs, and you deliver time and time again. Consistency is very important to me also, and I think last but not least, attitude. For me, you can be the smartest person in the room, but if your attitude sucks and you're arrogant as hell, then you know, you're never going to be a team player. You're never going to move the company forward. You got superstars and super brainy people and super smart people that have the great ideas, but if you can't implement them, and the only way to implement them is through the company, through the team, and if you can't implement them, then it's as good as never having those ideas ever said, in the boardroom or wherever. So I think attitude is very important. So it's the willingness to work with other people, the humility that you have in terms of always learning. Millennials always want to learn all the time, and they never give you that, oh, I know that already. They're always hungry to learn more stuff, and I think those are very, very core values. And this generation will really do a lot to change the world, because I think they have the right ingredients and the right mindset to be able to do so.
Right, right. So, Sir Marvin, I see you nodding. So do you agree, or are there particular leadership styles that you have that you would say, oh, this is different from what people traditionally do?
Well, George hit it smack on when he said that millennials are open to learning and being more personal and all that. And in my personal style, I would want to believe I have a high energy leadership style. I'm very, very optimistic of whatever happens. So I always make the light of everything that happens. And I like the work to be fun. So I plan company trips, cruises. I want people to enjoy their life in and out of work. And of course, the openness to change, which is ever constant now. Our youthfulness is something that we can really imbibe. Our company is 45, turning 46 years old. So we don't have so many millennials in the workplace. So I have to turn all of that energy into more aggressiveness, into more being, I have to push people to become more adventurous, taking more activities, thinking out of the box, and of course, taking cues from great businesses here and abroad. So again, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can just read, learn from others. So in totality, I think it's ability to mix and balance both of being outspoken, driven, a millennial, and also conservative at different times. So there is always a time and place for everything. So I think that nimbleness that a millennial should have should be put in the workplace.
Right. So, Sir Brian, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, well, there's a perception that millennials are usually introverts, and that actually holds true for myself. I personally would prefer a quiet evening watching movies together with loved ones rather than attend parties and banquets. And by being an introvert, I'm actually inclined towards being against politics and being more nihilistic in terms of leadership styles. And by leaning more towards a modern leadership style, I tend to become more of an enabler that allows individuals to let their light shine through a level playing field. And as you know, traditional management styles, they tend to hinge or lean towards surface level variables of measure like resume, alma mater, and family backgrounds. Now, while those are important, I do believe that it's better to provide a level playing field to allow everybody to contribute and to let their light shine. Because, as you know, there are introverts and there are extroverts. Some folks may be more outspoken than others, and by being that way, they may tend to outshine other people and give a perception of rather being more productive. And this makes leaders susceptible to thinking that surface level variables like that can be perceived as productivity, when in fact, even the most quiet and non active introverts deserve a chance to show us what they got. So I'd say, in a nutshell, my leadership style would be more of an enabler type, allowing people to let their light shine through a level playing field.
Right. So it's you're creating a level playing field in the workplace. So just as a follow-up question to that, Sir Brian, how do you create that level playing field? How do you let the more introverted people in the workplace be noticed?
You know, that highlights the key importance of human resource management. You need to be able to identify a individual's key strengths and weaknesses and be able to assign to them certain projects and assignments for them to apply their strengths. So there are introverts who are not as superior in expressing themselves, hence can be difficult to identify what they're good at. So that's why you need to create a less biased playing field by acting as the enabler and improving human resource management to identify these individuals in the workplace so as not to ostracize them. Because, as you know, in current times, it is still a very vocal, very image oriented society where the loudest can be the brightest. But that
Right. I
so
think.
that's pretty much how we start by paving the ground.
All right, thank you, sir. So we've spoken a bit about what makes millennial leaders distinct. I'm curious about what you think makes millennial leaders this way. What are the experiences, or was it particular experiences in the workplace, or just being born in this particular time that made millennials this way? So what exactly created these distinct characteristics? Would anyone like to take a stab at that?
Uh, yeah, so I mean, I still like it that you're calling me a millennial leader. So that's pretty awesome. I think it's just though I think what how they grew up in, the environment that they grew up in. Before it's really generations come out in phases, right? From the baby boomers who thought life was about to end. So they started making babies, and the focus was really for personal growth and wealth, and building up this massive amounts of wealth. And and you have the next generation that started to kind of soul search and I try to find themselves. It eventually brought about this generation that really cared for the environment and the people around them, because there was so much wealth, and in that the wake of that generation of wealth, or the wealth creation, is this a lot of new problems, new challenges. We solved a lot of problems along the way, but created massive new ones. And this is, a lot of people have shed a light on this, and this is what this generation took up, and this is what they've decided to take on, and this unfortunately is something that's was put on their put in their laps, and something that they have to deal with, or else future generations will suffer from it. And I really admire that they have taken upon themselves to take on this cudgel and really push for these types of reform and advocate the solution for all of these challenges. So I think it's just about the environment. A very different environment when they were living in, or where we were living in, and the generation behind us, and it affects you somehow, And I think the world is lucky, or the future generation is lucky to have this generation take on the world's biggest problems. And I think they have the recipe to solve it. They have the right skill set, the right mindset to be able to solve these problems for everybody else later on. So, kudos to them and good luck to them. And hopefully we can help in any way whatsoever.
Right. Thank you, sir. Is there, would you guys like to add anything to that?
Well, just like what George said, yeah, the market now is huge. Wealth and success throughout the world is abundant. No longer do we have to fight for over each other. Now we can just help each other. So never stop growing. That's, I think, the main theme in Millennials now. We like to learn from non-traditional ways. We like to learn online. There are so many online things that we can learn through the tip of our fingers, right? So I think that entitlement, social media power, our being technologically savvy, and of course, mix that with our purposeful leadership, our adherence, our core to the company vision, the mission, and the values and the culture. That's what's important to Millennials now. I don't think it's no longer a namesake or a name state in a company. People really actually want to believe in the purpose and the vision of each and every company. So I think that's one of the advantages of being a millennial in this environment now. And at the same time, everyone's an entrepreneur. Even if you work in a business or a corporate environment, if somewhat you are still an entrepreneur. Look at now how many people are selling on Facebook marketplaces. Look at how many people are starting up smaller businesses. So being an entrepreneur and mixing that up with the corporate setting is a solid formula for future success of not only the company, not only yourself, but also the world. So be bold, be innovative, and we align our personal and business goals together. So I think that's what we should do now as millennials.
Right. So we spoke quite a bit about what makes millennial leaders distinct. I'm curious about what you guys think about what millennials can learn from traditional leadership, and what is something that shouldn't change in the workplace. Sir Brian, would you have anything to share about that?
Well, it's really nice that you touched upon traditions, because I believe that traditions still play a key role in each and everyone's development. There are a lot of things that could be learned from traditions, and sometimes the best ways are the old ways. And one thing's for sure, millennials have a perception of being in a rush to attain everything, always wanting things in an instant. But that's just sometimes not how life works. And there are times when you need to take some key lessons from the traditional playbook, such as patience and consistency. So we also have a reputation of job hopping from one to the other, always changing careers when one doesn't seem to work initially. We tend to want to move to another path as quick as possible. So that may be good for certain individuals, but not for all. So a playbook from tradition would be to employ proper prudence, wisdom, and due diligence on everything that you do and whichever path you take.
Right. Would Sir Marvin like to add to that also?
Well, of course, me being a more progressive type of leader, and me also being the youngest of five, I really have more time looking towards the future, and I do rely on my brothers and sisters to take care of the more traditional aspects, But one thing we learned from my father and my mom is taking care of your name, your reputation, just like what Brian said. It's the only thing you will have in the end of the day. And if you don't take care of it, you'll be nothing. But I would rather go against the saying on save, save, save. My motto is you have to spend more to earn more. I'd rather focus on growing the top line than cutting down expenses for the organization. And when it comes to work-life balance, of which people are chasing so much, for me, there is no such thing. And according to Simon Sinek, someone I saw online, there is no balance. It's that sway from left to right and trying to find that perfect life. The journey together with others of keeping the balance is what we all should focus on. So I don't think it's more of a traditional, a new age, progressive thing. I think it's more of swaying left and right and making sure that you find that balance between the two.
Right. Right. So, Sir George, yes, sir. Angkas is very much part of this new or technology-based.
Well, first
business
off, I
model.
mean,
Yeah.
I think my wife would love Marvin's motto of spend, 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 right? So,
Yeah.
yeah. I think for me, millennials, this world is so different. Because of technology, everything is instant gratification. You get everything at your fingertips. Information, now food, deliveries. Everything is very, very quick. So I think if I were to advise millennials and what they could learn from the old world is really patience. Patience, consistency. A lot of these things, there are certain things that need to happen over time. You can't rush certain things. It's not always about getting the gratification right away. Sometimes, things take a long, long time to fester, gestate before they become ripe. So I think patience is a virtue that I think if they have that's a very, very good arsenal in their war chest to be able to move them forward very, very successfully. And along with patience, really is resilience and grit. Because we get things very quickly now, because we have everything available right away. The certain resilience or that grit factor goes. It's a bit tempered. And if we don't have it right away, we get irritated and frustrated. So I think that kind of goes hand in hand somehow. And we could learn a lot from our parents and grandparents. That it would take them you know long voyages and journey to go to Baguio or to go do something, and call somebody overseas to have a conference call. A lot of these things had to be planned out well to be able to achieve it. But having said that, use technology, make it more efficient, but let's still have that level of patience that we can learn from our parents and our former leaders.
Right, right. So there is that idea of instant gratification. We want what we want it right here, right
And
now.
spend.
Yeah, and so much has been said about millennials, right? And millennials in the workplace, and some of these might be myths, and some of them might be true. So for you guys, what do you think are the myths about millennials, and what do you think? Oh yeah, that's actually something that I would describe millennials as.
I mean, if I can start, I mean, one myth is that millennials is like, always on their social media, on their Facebook. I mean, I think that's not just true for millennials, but that's true for everybody, right? I mean, it's the world is different. The way we communicate to each other is very, very different. And you see non-millennials taking a page off, how do you take advantage of this new technology? So I think that's an unfair imposition on just the millennials. I think that's the world we live in right now, and that these things actually help us. Again, going back, not to belabor the point, and I wasn't ridiculing Marvin by saying spend, and focus on the top line. He is the growth officer, and he's done very, very well with his company and his family's business. But I think that the emphasis on moving forward in growth with millennials is often misunderstood as being brash, and I think that's a big myth. They know what they're doing. They're actually learned. They're very, very learned. They read a lot. They have a lot of information at on their fingertips, and they it's not just a rash decision that they go into, but rather, because they have all this information, we think it's rash because they got to it very, very quickly, because it would take us much longer to get to where they are. But really, it's about growth for them. It's about always moving forward, and I think that's something that we need to kind of take a look at more closely and embrace.
Right. Would you agree, Sir Marvin?
Yes, definitely. I think there's a lot of connotation that not only are millennials impulsive, brash, and like to do things on the fly, and somewhat on my opening statement, spoiled. I think these are things, when you look at it in one singular aspect, are all negative. But if you put it all together, really understand the whole environment and why we're doing what we're doing, all the information that we have right now, all the energy that we're getting, at the same time, the new Gen Zs are coming in as well. So mixing the Gen X and the Gen Z ideologies together, I think we're in a perfect position to be taken for granted and to be the underdogs to actually making success for the future. So I think that's a perfect position to be in as millennials.
Right.
I think one of the facts that are notable to take into account is that millennials are freedom lovers. We love our freedom, and it's because our creativity is fueled by freedom. It is through the freedom to act and to move around and think about as we please that creates that rampant artistic nature that most millennials exhibit. But on the flip side, one of the key myths that are subject to further analysis would be the notion that millennials are supposedly lazy. And I don't think it's entirely accurate, although it may appear like that sometimes. But, creativity is how millennials exhibit their productivity and their results. And that's why they need their freedom. So if you look at the rise of startups in Silicon Valley, much of this is actually fueled by millennial creativity. And if you look at the most technology companies these days, they employ millennial-centric cultures where they provide flexible work times, flexible workspaces, and highly favorable benefits to spark further creativity. And I think those are the facts and myths that are worth noting.
Right. So yeah, these characteristics of young leaders really create for a different work environment, and as you said, that creates something like flexible work time. What else do you think these characteristics of millennial leaders would create in terms of how the workplace is changed?
So,
Yeah.
go ahead, George, please.
Sir, you're muted.
Brian, take it away.
Oh, no, I guess, the transformation in the workspace done by or influenced by millennials, I think, is just truly disruptive. And I call it disruptive because it's culture changing. Gone are the politics that plague the workspace, that create anxiety amongst individuals. Millennials are naturally soft-natured in terms of persona, and that makes us natural team players that create a harmonious relationship amongst people in the workplace. And with our creativity, we've created a new platform where work is more flexible and you can be more productive through this flexibility, um, with excellent improvement in transport infrastructures similar to what Angkas has provided the Philippines. Imagine individuals have more time to actually be with their families rather than getting stuck in traffic, and they have more time to also exert effort on their work to deliver results. So disruption is continuous on this millennial landscape, and I think there's more yet to come.
Sir George, I think you wanted to say something as well.
No, I think that's correct. You know what Brian has said. You know, it's the implications of this new world, this disruption, where millennials have this attitude that they can just be productive anywhere, and you know, it's very efficient. It's time saving, and it's not just time saving. I mean, there are far-reaching implications to this, and it just really changed the world. I mean, case in point, you know, I'm in the beach right now, and there's a lot of distractions, so I had to move a little bit. But but then yeah, then it just adds to that you know you can be productive anywhere, and it just breaks down barriers and breaks down walls. There's no more borders. And wow, and unfortunately, that gives you that always on syndrome, which may lead to mental illness, you know, stress and whatnot. And there's a host of new set of problems associated with that that has to be resolved or, you know, kind of balanced. That's what Marvin said earlier. You know, it's all about that balance. You know, from one sway to the next to the other sway. But yeah, I think that's something that if I was to choose one major thing, it's being productive, you know, 100% of the time, or as productive as you can be. With, you know, you don't have to choose to be in an office or in anywhere else. You know, you can just you know, do your work wherever you are.
Right. So the workplace is now more productive and more flexible. How about you, Sir Marvin? How do you think the workplace has changed because when it's
Well,
run by young people?
adding to what Brian and George says, it's disruption. It's all about change, right? Education has changed. Doing business in this age has changed. Even growing a family in this time has changed. Change is constant. So what we have to have is adaptability to that change. And again, why do we have to force fit ourselves into a box that has been given to us throughout time and throughout tradition? Not hurting any traditionalists here. Like, take for example my position in our business. I'm called the Chief Growth and Development Officer. I don't know what that means, but there's no other position in the corporate world that does that. But I had to do that with the advice of my mentors to make sure that I'm not only focused on a certain area of our business, but focus on the total growth of development of each and every person in each and every aspect. But everything else, aside from changing, adaptability, we have to be nimble. And because of this pandemic, we've seen so much people pivot and be nimble, take big organizations pointed to the next direction. And that's because of the clarity and the transparency and the genuine human compassion or malasakit that exists in the workplace now because of the millennials.
Right, right. So we're going to take a few questions from our audience, and I want to get started with this one because Sir George mentioned the idea of mental health in the workplace. So one question says, how do you de-stress?
Yeah, so you gotta distress with, you know, at every chance you get. You know, I believe in working hard, but I also believe in working smart. You work so hard on, and then you burn out. It's not good for anybody. It's not good for your bosses. It's not good for your company, your employees, and your organization. So you need to be able to. I wouldn't necessarily say strike the balance, but you need to know yourself, right? And I think, you know, I'm not a fan of structured. You know, like, you know, you have this much work and then you distress. I mean, you got to do this along the way. You can't just be a bent up volcano and then explode later on. Mental health is something that is a real issue. Stress is a real issue. This pandemic, has taught us that, you know, really exacerbated the whole. You can work anywhere, turn on always on. Working every single hour of the day. The boss know you're home, so you know you have no escape. And we need to be able to pull back on that. We need to be able to create boundaries, even virtual ones, despite having, you know, the benefits of having no boundaries. So I think that's something that needs to be discussed more. And you just take on a hobby, take on sports. You know, I snowboard every year. That's how I distress. Unfortunately, you know, you can't travel now, so I'm looking for other ways to do it. So, but you got to do it every step, every chance you get. reasonably.
And I want to expand that question for Sir Brian. Not only how do you de-stress, but how do you ensure the mental health in the workplace for the people that work there?
So I can't emphasize more on politics in the workspace because it's these sort of things that create tension and anxiety between individuals and amongst different teams. And when you have that kind of tension, that's not good for the mental health of your people. And it's really important that you keep your people happy and in a good mental state because it reflects in their work and in their productivity. So to do that, I employ the use of open communication. You open all avenues for people to express themselves amongst each other and between each other, regardless of position. You always have a say. You always have an opportunity to express your point. Because if you were to employ such a stringent tradition wherein you can only allow certain folks to say something and those with something to say don't get a chance, such as the introverts, then you actually ostracize certain people and you pour more fuel to the fire brought about by tension. And if you were going to put it in a nutshell, I'd say open communication and a new culture of reduced politics is what you need to improve mental health in the workspace.
Right. So, Sir Marvin, would you say the same? Are there is the biggest issue tensions in the workplace, or are there other issues surrounding mental health?
Well, of course, politics, although we want to avoid it, is still there in the workplace. That's something that gives significant stress, and of course, the leadership style of the bosses also gives significant stress. But for me, one of the things that I would impart to everyone to reduce their stress is to have fun, like smile. You enjoy life. Don't be too serious at all times. Find that balance. Be weird, be funny, be witty. These are the things, yes, a lot of extroverts like me have, but there are also some introverts in the offices that like to have fun in different ways. Like George, find a hobby. For me, I personally love driving. I like to drive. I drive every week. So it's all about finding that balance. You can't just work yourself to death. I mean, you have to live life. Right now, what the pandemic taught me is that because I'm work from home, I was able to be with my family. I was able to see my kids. I have 3 kids. I had a 2-year-old kid when the pandemic started, and he didn't say a thing. Now he's 3 years old this Saturday, and he's talking so much. So you see that growth in his life each and every day, and it reminds you what's important in life. Is it all the work, all the stress, or is it just being and living life where you are right now?
Right. So now that we are in this pandemic, we have another question about it. What was the most difficult challenge you faced as a leader during the pandemic, and how did you overcome it? And how do you see businesses moving forward in a post-pandemic environment? Would anyone like to start with that?
Well, I can start. So, our business has been very lucky. We've been very blessed because the pandemic has positively impacted the consumer goods business. But the number one challenge we had was making sure that when the ECQ hit, we had to have all our deliveries, all our supply chain management people. We had to, number one, make everyone feel safe. Number two, we had to make sure that we were able to provide to the LGUs the sustenance, the products that we had to their doorsteps because no one could go out. That was a big challenge on us, and we really took it to heart. Our family, me, my brother, my sister, we personally were the ones texting with all the LGUs, all the orders, making sure that everyone got served their orders in time. So it really stressed the organization to a point wherein at least now we know our limits. We know we could achieve this. We know we could go there. We know we can do this volume. But at the same time, it was highly stressful for everyone. But at the same time, it also showed us where our bending point is, where our breaking point was. So now we move forward and grow from there.
Right, right. So, Sir Brian, is there anything that you learned from the pandemic that you're going to use moving forward?
Well, definitely, I mean, during the height of the pandemic, we actually experienced tremendous bottlenecks in the transportation infrastructure, mainly because a lot of the barangays were actually closed out, and a lot of our folks who work here in the factory were unable to get in to report to work. So that was quite a hindrance on our production. So a really important lesson that we learned was when we actually tweaked the production line to eke out the same productivity and the same volume as if we still utilize three shifts. At the height of the pandemic, we were limited to only running 1 to 2 shifts, but still were able to spew out the same volume as if we had three shifts. So utilization parameters of the machines and keeping spares and the setups of parameters and the variables for productivity was definitely emphasized during the height of the pandemic. And that's one thing that we want to maintain in our culture moving forward.
Sir George, would you like to share anything about this as well?
Well, for us, I'd like to say that we're kind of used to getting shut down, right? So I think our colorful journey with Angkas has really taught us how to be a little bit more resilient when it comes to shutdown. So it was just really another day in the office when the pandemic happened. But kidding aside, um, you know, before Angkas came in, Habal Habal was deemed very dangerous. It was unaccepted by society, and there was no regulations around it. Because of Angkas, now you have an efficient, safe way of riding motorcycles as part of your public transportation ecosystem, and we made that possible. So, you know, getting shut down again during the pandemic and closing out all public transportation, trying to figure out whether it was safe and be relevant again during the time of the pandemic and during the time of the COVID outbreak was yet another challenge for us. And it helped us along the way, the journey that we've had in terms of developing that grit and developing that way forward, the resilience. But it was at a very, very different scale. We had to work with the UP College of Public Health. I had to come in and help the government because we didn't have any business. So I wanted to know more about the virus while I was helping the community as well. We pivoted very, very quickly. In the first month of the pandemic, we already pivoted 100%. We cut out our commissions to help the community, and our customers patronized us simply to help the bikers. So it is really, kind of like a payback that our community or our passengers or our customers did just to make our bikers survive. So there was a lot of there's a lot of community-based, I guess, mind melt in terms of how do we move forward. The organization faced a lot of challenges in terms of how we communicate. We were a company that did events every week. We were a company that built up that community management more than just social media, but talked to everybody in person, and that changed overnight. So again, it was that grit and that resilience, and now we're back up and running again, and it paid off. We're relevant somehow again, and back with a vengeance. So I think it was such a challenge to do it all over again. And this is our fourth shutdown. And we know there will be many, many more challenges moving forward. There will be more problems. Life is about problem solving. So I always tell this in all my conferences and all the marketers, all the entrepreneurs. Don't make it so that you solve everything and you're in a life with no problems, because that will never happen. You're setting yourself up for disappointment. But make it so that you get better at solving problems. The mindset shifts, the paradigm shifts in terms of expecting problems and getting better at it, being more resilient to it, expecting it. And when you develop the kind of framework to problems, whether that's a pandemic, whether it's a major shift in the environment or technology, or you're getting obsolete and you need to innovate, you'll have the right tools and the right mentality. Again, the attitude is very important to be able to really push things forward, and you'll survive. You'll be a company that lasts, hopefully.
Right. So you really added to your toolbox in terms of problem solving. So we have one more question from our viewers. How do you handle the pressure of working with colleagues from the older generation? Or maybe how do you create good relationships across generations in the workplace? Would anyone like to take a stab at this?
Yeah, I'll go first.
Yeah.
Respect them. You have to respect what they say, even though you don't agree with it. You have to listen because they are more patient than us, and you have to take their point of view into consideration. They are coming from such more wisdom and experience than us, and sometimes as millennials, our fault is that we think we know everything. We think we can change the world, and yet we don't respect the history and how the world got to be. So it's more about respecting that time and tradition, and respecting them, and thus in turn they might respect you more.
Right. Would anyone else like to add to that, Sir Brian?
Well, I'd like to use the analogy of barriers to entry. So just like in every industry and every business sector, there's always going to be a barrier to entry, but there's always a way to solve that. For some, it's to create better relationships with the folks that are more senior with you, or like what Marvin said, to respect them, and through that, create a bond by working to them and showing them what you got. Through that, they will earn your respect and they will respect you in in that tradition as well. So the experience of working with elders, one of the greatest things is that you learn a lot from these individuals. They have a lot of value embedded and seared into their brains, and it's your job as the younger individual to actually get some value add from establishing relationships with more senior folks. And it's also your job to get along and to build a relationship with more senior individuals. So there's barriers to entry everywhere, but there's always ways to solve them.
Sir George, is there a cross-generational relationship in Angkas?
Yes, there is. I mean,
Yeah.
not just in Angkas, but externally and internally, right? I deal with a lot. I mean, I'm the chief transport advocate, and essentially this public affairs work. So I deal with a lot of congressmen, senators, legislators, LGUs, mayors, and a lot of them come from the old world. They're very very traditional. So I'm kind of like half and half. I did grow up with a lot of these virtues taught to me in terms of how the way the world was back then, and how a lot of our fathers saw it. Bible, a lot of tradition, a lot of respect. But I also understand, the millennials, because I was one foot in the door when the new technology and this new generation was growing up. So it's kind of right in the middle, and I have like this unique perspective on both sides, which I think adds a lot of value in the work that I do. I'm a stickler for seniority, so seniority is always very very important to me. Sometimes to a fault, and then you need to be a little bit more firm, because being a child or looking like a child or looking young, they may look down in terms of your skill set. So you need to be able to be firm enough to make a stand, and make them take you seriously. But I think that's also naturally occurring now as more and more young leaders emerge, and become successors of old industries. I think it's a little bit of both, right? So you need to respect them, but you also need to be firm with your ideas, and you need to all be able to push your agenda as well. So you need to strike that balance, and this is an art. Relationships, managing relationships is an art, but you cannot change the world without the world in it. People need to believe you. People need to want to follow you. And by following you, it's not just the millennials who's going to follow you, it's everybody. Then that's how you affect real change. So you need to be able to, I wouldn't say pander, but you need to be able to appeal to both sides. And you can only do so if you're nimble enough to shift approaches, because those are very different approach that you can take, and you need to be able to apply to every single situation.
All right. Thank you so much for that, sir. We will have our closing statements. So for our closing, what advice would you give to millennials, especially those that are currently in leadership positions, or maybe even those who are aspiring to be in leadership positions? We can start again with Sir Brian.
So, to all the millennials out there, to my fellow millennials, stay creative, stay passionate. These are the sparks within us that fuel our momentum, our passion to explore the unknown and to discover new things, to learn new skill sets. These are what will fuel us further to the future. And always be creative. Don't stop thinking, don't stop learning, and never close your mind. Because one thing's for sure, through the lessons that I've learned in this journey, one thing's for sure, it's that we need to keep an open mind to be able to reach further. Obsolescence is out there, whether you're an individual or a company, and it's out there to get you, but you can mitigate it by maintaining an open mind and by embracing innovation and disruption. Applying these to your culture and your mindset will enable you to become something you never imagined yourself to be. And when you are transformative, you are ever changing, immune to obsolescence. That is my advice.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Sir George.
Yeah, so I think for me, it's my advice to a lot of entrepreneurs. First of all, be an entrepreneur. Even if you even if you're working, you have a 9 to 5, be an entrepreneur on the side. With the pandemic and everybody working from home, you have the environment to do so. So always be an entrepreneur, even when you're working. Learn from your work and apply to your business and grow that business and eventually become an entrepreneur. That's always the goal of everybody, and you should make that your goal. Now, putting up a business is very difficult. It's very hard. So you're gonna have to go through a lot of ups and downs. So, since you're already doing that anyway, you're gonna go through ups and downs and good and bad. You might as well solve a problem, right? Solve a problem, and if you solve a real problem, then you'll know that that you'll see that a lot of people will gladly pay you for it and compensate you for it as long as you solve an actual problem. So if you're gonna go through all that, might as well do it. The second advice I give you guys: nothing markets itself. Okay, I know you guys are smart, you guys are clever, you guys have a great knowledge base. But just because you have a great idea, just because you have a great product, you can have the greatest product out there. But if you don't market it, it won't happen. They won't. Nothing ever markets itself. The ATM is everywhere. But in the 1950s it failed. It's a flop product. Imagine if we didn't pursue the ATM, then we wouldn't have the convenience of withdrawing money, and along as many other things in life. Nothing ever markets itself. Now, in this generation, in this world of problems that we have, the Philippines is the best opportunity for us to solve problems. We have the most number of problems, and that is an opportunity for everybody, that they can get compensation from that they can create wealth from, and they can make their own lives better, and other people's lives better as well. If you have the ability to do so, then it becomes today, especially in the pandemic, it becomes your responsibility to make it happen. So be responsible because you have that skill set. Make it incumbent upon yourself to solve a problem, do something in the community, help somebody, or do your job well. Because whatever you do, everything that you're doing right now is moving the country forward and helping a lot of people in the process. So always be strong, be passionate, stay the course, never give up, but also be realistic, be grounded. Again, nothing ever markets itself. I don't care how great your idea is. So many great ideas out there. that, because the people behind it didn't have the resilience, didn't have the grit, it's not there. You've never heard of it or you've never used it. So that's such a pity. Thanks, guys.
Right. Nothing markets itself. So finally, Sir Marvin.
Well, yeah. Well, on top of the solid advice from George and Brian already, be prepared for the rapid growth of exponential technology. The singularity, which is defined by the hypothetical point in time at which technological growth becomes uncontrollable and irreversible, resulting in unforeseeable changes to human civilization. I took a course in Singularity University a year or two back, and it was astonishing. You won't know what's coming until it's here. AI, robotics, human-machine interfaces, the future of money, scalable learning, climate change, digital biology, ethics for the future, and the constant living in the age of disruption. So all of that is to come in our lifetime. So be prepared for that. But in your journey, have fun doing it and embrace the changes to come, because change will come. And of course, make an impact. No matter how big or small of an impact you can make a positive impact. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. Many thanks to our speakers today, Mr. Brian Liu, Mr. George Royeca, and Mr. Marvin Chu Lim. And to this series sponsor, Insular Life, to our partners, Bank Marketing Association of the Philippines, the British Chamber of Commerce of the Philippines, the Financial Executives Institute of the Philippines, the Management Association of the Philippines, the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the Philippine Association of National Advertisers, and our media partner, the Philippine Star, and of course, to everyone who joined today's discussion. This session concludes the Business World Insights Leadership Series. Join us again this February 17th at 11 a.m. for the Business World Virtual Stock Market Roundtable. Be sure to tune in to Business World's social media pages to be updated on our next projects. Again, this is Jenina Ibañez, and this has been Business World Insights.